Today I want to talk about terms and conditions, married folk. Terms and conditions. Let's be honest. How many of us are reading terms and conditions these days? Terms and conditions. Apple will update their terms and conditions what feels like every 2 weeks. And they will send you a 35-page document on your phone of these terms and conditions that have been updated. And what do y'all do? Scroll, agree. You have no idea what you disagreed to. You just signed your whole life and identity away. You over here worried about AI taking over. You agreed to the terms and conditions of Apple Intelligence, let me tell you. And it's not just Apple, it's anybody's terms and conditions. Instagram, Amazon, everybody can update these terms and conditions. And what are y'all doing? Agree. We're not reading these terms and conditions these days. They'll send these updates, and why read them, right? We just automatically trust them. But because of it, I think that we commit ourselves to things that we don't fully understand. And we assume that it won't affect us. I think we treat marriage the same way. I think we treat weddings like Amazon or Apple's terms and conditions. Like the wedding. Can I get a married couple up here on the stage? Who's bold today? One married couple that's bold today. I hope they both agree. If not, this is going to be bad. All right. This is a wonderful married couple. To say hello, married couple. This is Arthur and Allison. I think that what tends to happen is we get to the wedding day and we go through the motions and we treat it as if we're reading the terms and conditions and we just speed past it and we want to get to the I do. And then we press the button as if it's like an I agree to all these terms and conditions. But we don't slow down and really pay attention to what's actually taking place. So here's how this works. You can stay right here. You come on this side right here. And you turn this way. Y'all have done this before, right? Yeah. Okay. Let's act like we know what we're doing, all right? So here's, now when I do a wedding, and we get to the part where we're about to exchange vows, these are the words that I say. Now, most wedding officiants will say something to this effect, but this is what I say. I say, Arthur, and then I'll say, Allison, no other vows are more sacred than these you are about to assume. You are entering into a holy moment, which is the deepest mystery of experience and the ultimate expression of divine love. And then I'll look at you, and I'll have you repeat after me. And then I'll look at you, and I'll have you repeat after me. And I'll say something like this. I'll say, Allison, I take you to be my husband, to be my wife. No, come on, somebody. To be my wife. To have and to hold. To protect and to honor. To comfort and to cherish. From this day forward, forsaking all others, I promise to keep myself only for you as long as we both shall live. And then I look at you, I say, I, Allison, take you, Arthur, to be my husband, to have and to hold, to protect and to honor, to comfort and to cherish. From this day forward, forsaking all others, I promise to keep myself only for you as long as we both shall live. And everybody says, oh, right? And it's almost your anniversary. A month, come on. Let's go. Don't ask me how many years. Come on, somebody. Now, it's at this point that we exchange rings. I have them hold hands, and we'll put that ring on that finger, and we'll repeat those words. And then at the end, everybody says, I do. I do. But what did you just do? What did I do? Look at somebody and say, what did I do? Many of us don't realize what we just did. Even though I teed it up, I set it up, I said, hey, this is about to be a holy moment. You're about to enter into something that is otherworldly. It is not connected to our world. Like the thing that just happened in this moment, it is spiritual, it is divine. It is something that transcends the reality that we're experiencing today, and it establishes a covenant that is before us in God, and it is nothing on this earth that compares to it. And we say, I do. Give them a hand. Come on. You may kiss the bride. No play. Yes, vow renewals. Come on, somebody. But we say, I do, as if it was just a mindless scroll. And everybody is hungry. They're waiting for the reception. And then you have to wait 3 years for them to take pictures to eat. And at the end of the day, everybody's celebrating. And then moments go by, days, weeks, years, and then people are wondering, what the heck did I do? But the problem is, marriage isn't built on terms and conditions. Marriage is built on covenant. Everyone say covenant. And I need us to understand that we cannot treat marriage, the vows that we exchange in marriage, as if we just exchanged some terms and conditions, a contractual agreement. You did your part, I did my part, and then we can move on. No. What happened was you entered into, everyone say, a covenant. Covenant is very different than just a contract that outlines terms and conditions. And I think many of us enter into the covenant with our own terms and conditions. And although we're saying the things that the preacher or the person is telling us to say, that for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, as long as we both shall live, we say these things and we say, I do, I will, I'll commit, I'll do all these things. But really we have our own terms and conditions. I'll do this as long as. I'll make good on my part of the thing as long as you. And so even in this covenant, we have our own unspoken terms and conditions. But I want to tackle a question that comes up in marriages that are struggling. I see it a lot, and it sounds something like this. So then what should I do if my spouse isn't honoring our covenant? Then what do I do? What do I do if my spouse isn't honoring our covenant? Maybe you thought to yourself, I'm married too soon. That's why this is all happening. I rushed into this and I'm not happy. Or maybe you just think the only way forward is out. Have you been there? The only way for us to move forward is for me to get out of this. And our culture tells us that if something doesn't start right, it can't be fixed. That if the foundation is flawed, then we should just tear it all down and start all over. Well, that's how contracts work. If you're in real estate, or I've got some realtors in the room, some real estate agents, where you at? Whoop, whoop, whoop. I know you're there. Don't you want business? I mean, come on, somebody. So I got some realtors in the room, I think. But if you know anything about real estate, it's about contracts. It's about contracts. Realtors, real estate agents will draft these contracts, and they will write contracts for the exchange of property, of real property. And in real estate, a contract is the basis of the agreement, and it is only enforceable if the contract was executed properly. And that if any part of the contract was not executed properly, then the contract can be considered null and void. Meaning that if I didn't do the contract right, if we didn't agree to the terms in the right way, if the signatures are all wrong, if it wasn't fully executed properly, then the contract, no matter how far we get in the process, if something were to go wrong and I were to go to court and the court were to look at the contract and go, oh, well, this wasn't executed fully, then this contract actually just is a piece of paper. It's null and void. It's not enforceable. And we treat marriage the same way. We think that if it didn't start right, then it doesn't count, right? If we didn't marry under the right way, if we didn't get into this the right way, if things aren't going the way that we think they should be going, shouldn't we be able to get out of this? And I think we assume that marriage works that way, but contracts work that way. Covenant doesn't work that way. I want you to write this down. Contracts are about how they start. Covenants are about how they're kept. Covenants are about how they're kept. And this matters, y'all. It matters because we're not just people who make covenants. We're not just people who say covenantal things. What the Bible describes humanity as is we are a covenant people. We are a covenantal people. We're not just people who make covenants. We're not just people who have covenantal language. We are a covenant people. And Scripture teaches us how these covenants should be sustained. I want you to know that the whole basis of our faith in God, in Jesus, is based on a what? A covenant. We have no relationship with the creator of the universe outside of covenant. It's because of the covenant that he established that we even have a relationship with him. So everything, all of life, our relationship with God, our relationship that we pursue God, that we get to have a relationship with him where we get to know God, is only possible because of covenant. It's the whole thing. The greatest covenant of all is our relationship with God. And now we're going to get into Romans chapter 5. Romans chapter 5. In Romans chapter 5, Paul teaches us about this covenantal relationship that we have with God. Now, this message is going to get real, I'll say theological. But there are three ways that people tend to approach Scripture. And I think y'all are one of these ways. You approach it in one of these ways in the room. There's the practical approach where there are people who just listen, I read this. I just need to know, how does this apply to me? How does this apply to my life? I want to see, is the Bible relevant to what I got going on? Where are my practical folk at? Just give me the life application, right? And then there's the next approach is the spiritual approach. I like to say the mystical approach. You're the type of people that will read something and you'll go, but what is God really saying? Where y'all at? I know what it says, but what is God really saying here? And if folks are going, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But what kind of earth was it, though? And if there had not been a beginning, what beginning is the beginning being established as beginning? What is he really saying here? And we're going, you said it. Maybe he's saying what you're saying. And then there is the seminarian approach where you're the folk, I need the historical and the theological context so that I can understand how to locate in history what happened and how these things have evolved through time. And then from there, we can get to a place of contextualizing the timeless principles that we've extracted from the hermeneutics that we've employed in this exegetical approach of Scripture. And all of y'all are in the room today. And y'all all listening to me talking about, say something to me. And I'm going to read this. I'm going to give you what it says here, and I'm going to try my best to let the Holy Spirit lead. Now, no matter how you approach this, I think actually Romans chapter 5 speaks to all of those three approaches. If you read Romans, I want you to read Romans chapter 5, the full chapter, this week, and it speaks to all three of those approaches. But Romans chapter 5, where we're going to start today, is in verse 12. And I want to explain this to you today because the Apostle Paul talks about covenant and how it is kept. But he uses a story that Scripture is weaving all throughout the text. And I want to show it to you. Romans chapter 5, verse 12. Are you glad you came to church today? Yes. All right. It says this. Can we do this? I want to go old school. Let's stand. Let's stand. Let's stand. Let's go. Let's stand. Some of y'all are like, oh, we've been standing. You want me to stand? Let's stand. This is a holy moment. It says this, Romans chapter 5, verse 12. It says, therefore, just as sin came into the world through, what's that say? One man, and death through sin. And so death spread to all men because all sinned. For sin indeed was in the world before the law was given, but sin is not counted where there is no law. Yet death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over those whose sinning was not like the transgression of Adam, who was a type of the one who was to come. You can take your seats. And somebody is going, what? Others of you are going, I knew this is good. I like where this is going. Therefore, just as sin came into the world through one man, that one man, his name is who? Adam. Adam in the garden. When he and Eve disobeyed God, he introduced something into the world that had not existed prior to that moment, and that was sin. And through that one man, that first man, Adam, he introduced sin, and because sin was now in the world, now death is in the world. And we were all born into that chaos. We were all born into that reality, the reality of brokenness, the reality of a will that allows us to choose between good and evil. We're not just robots. We're not just people who can blindly follow God. We have choices that we can make. We have a free will that we can execute. And in that, there is brokenness, there is pain, there are wars, there are famine. There are things in our world. We live in a state of brokenness. And it's entered into the world through that one man. Why does that matter? Well, that matters because the covenant that God came to establish, it didn't start right. None of this started right. And so if you're thinking today that the only way that you can uphold a covenant, that you can keep your covenant promise, is if you started right, then the whole basis of our faith, the whole basis of our relationship with God has no foundation, because guess what? This whole thing didn't start right. That first man, his name is Adam. He disobeyed and sin entered to the world, and ever since then, our hearts have leaned towards things that oppose God. Through Adam, sin entered the world. Because of his failure, all of humanity were born into this state of brokenness. And if the story ended there, we'd be left with nothing but loss. But the story doesn't end there. It goes on, and it says this, but the free gift is not like the trespass. For if many died through one man's trespass, much more have the grace of God and the free gift by the grace of that one man, Jesus Christ, abounded for many. And the free gift is not like the result of that one man's sin. For the judgment following the one trespass brought condemnation, but the free gift following many trespasses brought justification. It's good. It's good teaching. What is actually happening here? Well, that trespass that the first Adam had entered into, that opened the door for death and sin and brokenness into the world. We were all born into that. But there was a gift that was offered. And the Bible calls this gift offered through the last Adam. And that last Adam, you might have guessed, his name is Jesus. And the scripture says, but the gift is not like the trespass. Because even though the trespass entered all this brokenness and all this chaos and disobedience and all that, the gift that has come into the world through the last Adam offers the opportunity for what was broken to be mended, what was destroyed to be restored. And he offers reconciliation, he offers hope, he offers redemption, and he takes what the enemy meant for evil and he's able to turn it around and work it out for good. And so the story of the Bible, the whole text, the whole covenant, it starts with brokenness, but it doesn't start or end with brokenness. It ends with redemption through his blood. And this last Adam, it says the gift that he offers is not like the trespass. The gift is not like the trespass. It goes on to say, for if because of one man's trespass, death reigned through that one man, how much more will those who receive the abundance of grace and the free gift of righteousness reign in life through the one man, Jesus Christ? We have the opportunity to reign in life, to reign in our marriages, to triumph and have victory in areas where we feel broken, where we feel defeated. The Lord did not just come so that we would have an existential experience where this salvation is just this soteriological, esoterical reality that's up here in the sky. He actually came to offer a gift that changes your marriage. It changes your attitude. It changes the way you see yourself and the way you see the world. He fixes broken things and he makes them better. He restores what is without hope and what we think cannot be restored. He does what the enemy convinces you is not possible. This first Adam, he says everything is lost and broken and he enters failure. But this last Adam, Jesus, he says that's not the end of the story. Jesus doesn't just erase the past, he redeems it. And so the Apostle Paul, he's painting this contrast here between the first Adam and the last Adam. This is the story of the two Adams. And what I want you to write down is that God, he can redeem what we would rather discard. He can redeem what we would rather discard. I want to ask you a question. If Jesus can restore all of humanity's brokenness, and the covenant that was severed with our relationship with God and how we did not uphold our end of the bargain, if he can redeem and restore that, what makes you think that there's something that he can't restore? Why are there things in your life that you think he can't fix, that he can't redeem? Why do you think your marriage is so far in disarray, so far in deep and steeped in brokenness and all these things that you think that he can't bring redemption? Where do they do that at? I remember Jenny and I were, I want to say counseling, but it was more like intervening at this point. It was like intervention because the marriage between this particular husband and wife was in disarray, and it was chaotic. And here's the thing about y'all. I'm going to vent for a second. Y'all will, everything's great, us in the face, week after week, until everything is completely trash. And then we get a call. And it's like, Pastor, I need you here right now. I don't know what this. And this was like one of those situations where it was chaotic, and we were being called at that moment of chaos to come and they're cussing and fighting and screaming and punching holes in walls. And I show up. The wife is gone, took the kids somewhere. We don't know where she's at. He's fuming, punching holes in walls. I'm trying to just de-escalate the situation. And Jenny, she's trying to find the wife, ends up finding the wife. She's at some hotel where she didn't give anybody the location. And so she's there trying to kind of de-escalate the situation there. I'm trying to de-escalate the situation here. And I'm saying to the guy, I'm just, as things kind of get a little calmer, I said, well, would you be open to having a conversation with all of us? And he says, I don't know about a conversation, but I'll hear what she got to say. And I go, okay. Something. Jenny's with the wife, and she's talking with her, and she's being short and all the stuff. She asked, well, would you be open to have a conversation with him? And she goes, well, I don't know about a conversation, but I'll be open to what he got to say. I don't got nothing to say. Okay. So we at least have two people who are willing to have a non-conversation. But be in the presence of each other, I guess. We'll take it at this point. We'll take it. So we took it. And we were able to get them together and sit down. And the question that was asked was not, what did you do? Or what's happening here? Or who did it? Let's figure out whose fault it is. The question was very simple. Do you want to get well? Do you want to get well? And see, I can get into the weeds of all of your marital strife and brokenness, and he did this, and I don't know why he don't understand this, and she did this. I don't know why she always tripping about this and this. And we can get into the weeds, and we can start talking, well, if you just say this, maybe she'll like that. Or if you just approach it like this, maybe she won't. But the question is, hey, what if we put all that aside? Do you want to get well? Is this where you want to live? Is this where you want to pitch your tent? Is this what life looks like for you? Or do you actually want to get to something that's on the other side of this? That's the question that I have. And it reminds me of Jesus when he walks up to the man in John chapter 5, where he's sitting at the pool of Bethesda, and everybody's going in before him, and he looks at him. He's been there for 38 years, and he's trying to figure out, well, do you want to get well? Do you want to get well? I'm asking the married couples in the room, hey, do you want to get well? Because I can tell you this, the more we go down the line of what you think is the offense and how you think you are in the right and they're in the wrong, the more we get into the weeds of that, guess where it actually leads? More brokenness, more offense, more resentment, more bitterness. But the question is, do you want to get well? And if if the answer to the question is yes, I want to get well, let's put that conversation aside and let's talk about covenant for a moment. Let's talk about covenant for a moment. How do we live this out? What do we do when we're in a covenant that has been severed or broken? And so I told this couple in so many words that they've got three choices. And now I told them a whole lot of stuff, but I was able to condense this to the three choices. And here's the first choice in repairing a broken covenant. You get to choose your yes. You get to choose your yes. The question isn't, did I marry the wrong person? The question actually is, am I choosing to honor God with the covenant that I'm in now? Am I choosing to honor God with my yes? What am I doing with my I do? What am I doing with my I will? And I know we think that the problem is out there. Oh, but what if they're not holding up to their end of the bargain? Well, the reality is that you get to pick your pain. You can pick the pain of endurance, or you can pick the pain of consequence. You can pick the pain of patience, or you can pick the pain of regret. You can pick the pain of marriage, or you can pick the pain of divorce. But there's going to be pain. The one thing that you cannot pick is whether or not there's going to be pain. Where my married couples in the room, you know that there's pain involved in this thing. There's some pain involved in it. In the pain of marriage, it means that we're choosing to communicate when you would rather shut down and not have anything to do with it. You're choosing forgiveness when bitterness and resentment is way easier. You're choosing to make investments even though it doesn't feel like they're being reciprocated. But if you're choosing to escape, if you're choosing the pain of divorce, then you'll have to endure the pain of the grief. You'll have to endure the pain of the feelings of failure and rejection, or the regrets of knowing that you really didn't do all that you could. And I don't know if you've ever counseled a couple who's been through a divorce or spoken to someone who's been divorced. There's a moment in that journey post the divorce where they begin to heal. And what starts to happen is they start to see themselves. And they start to see what they were like in the marriage. And guess what they start to do? Not everything was their fault. But now, I have nothing that I can do to fix that. And so a part of that grief process is a period of regret. What if I would have done this differently? But when you're in the marriage, you just think it's the other person. I'm doing everything right, and it's you got to get your act together. We just can't. We just got irreconcilable differences and all this stuff, and we think that we don't get to choose our yes. You can choose resentment. You can choose bitterness, or you can choose redemption through the blood of Jesus. You can choose reconciliation. You can choose forgiveness. You can choose joy. You can choose peace. You can choose your yes. But it doesn't mean that it's going to come without the discomfort. Here's what Hebrews chapter 12:11 says. It says, no discipline is enjoyable while it is happening. It's painful. It says, but afterward, there will be peace. It says, discipline is not enjoyable. It is painful, but afterward there will be peace. There will be a peaceful harvest of right living to those who are trained in this way. It may be hard today, but there's peace on the other side of it. Choosing your yes it might feel hard. I'm not going to lie to you. There are some times where there's a lot of things you want to choose, but yes ain't one of them. But the second choice that you can make is you can choose your yoke. You can choose your yoke. You can choose your yes, you can choose your yoke. And I know what you're thinking. There's a kind of yoke that I want to choose. I want to yoke them up by the neck. And now, if I could just get 10 minutes of wringing that neck, that's a long time to wring a neck. But I'm not talking about that kind of yoke. We often hear about being equally yoked. Oh, they're not equally yoked. We just throw things around. What is a yoke? Y'all don't know. I know y'all don't know. The seminarians in the room are actually. I heard it in the spirit, actually. A yoke is this wooden contraption that they would use back in the Bible days, and the yoke would tie around the neck of usually two oxen. So you'd have an oxen on this side and an oxen on this side, and the yoke would yoke them together so that they can plow the fields. And so to be equally yoked actually has nothing to do with the yoke. It has everything to do with the person that they're yoked to. And so to be equally yoked meant that you didn't want to pair a weak oxen with a strong oxen, or a deficient or sick oxen with one that is strong. Why? Because the weak one is going to put the burden of the plowing on the strong one. And so what being equally yoked really means, it's about effort in the partnership. It means not equal interest, not I have the same musical taste. We have the same love language. Do you realize we got the same love language? Oh my goodness, we're going to be married forever. We have the same interests. It don't matter if you have the same interests, the same taste in music, the same taste in lifestyle. If you do not have equal effort in the partnership, somebody's going to get burnt out. Somebody's going to get burnt out. And so to be equally yoked means that we're both putting in equal effort into the relationship. It doesn't mean that you have the same capacity, but it does mean that you're putting in the same effort. Hear me today, because a lot of you are looking at capacity. And both husbands and wives, you have different capacities. And you're looking at capacity, and you're not putting in the effort, but you're basing the effort on your capacity. And when you base it on your capacity and not their capacity, you will miss the effort that they're putting in. Because effort is not based on your point of view. I can't look at my point of view and my capacity and go, you're not putting in effort. I have to step into your shoes and take a look at your capacity and take a look at what effort it takes for you to manage your own capacity. And then I have to go, man, you're putting in a lot of effort. But we're looking at each other's capacity and going, I'm carrying more than you. What if you have the capacity to carry more in this particular area? But there's another area that you ain't got no capacity in. And they got all the capacity. And you ain't carrying nothing. You know, I don't know what it's like to yoke up 2 oxen. But I do know what it's like to carry all the groceries in from the car in one trip. You know what I'm saying? One trip. One trip. That's all it takes. We're not doing the back and forth. That's not my capacity. One trip. It's my capacity. An unequally yoked marriage will frustrate the person who ends up carrying all the weight, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. And eventually, somebody's going to get burnt out. In order for the partnership to work, you've got to decide what kind of effort are you going to be willing to put in here. You get to choose your yes, and you get to choose your yoke. But here's the thing. 2 Corinthians 6:14 gives us another picture of this. It says, don't become partners with those who reject God. Another translation says, do not be unequally yoked together with unbelievers. And it says, how can you make a partnership out of right and wrong? That's not a partnership, that's war. And so the conversation that's being had here is to be equally yoked means that I'm in partnership with someone who I'm accepting God and they're rejecting him. And I wonder if in marriage, you're in partnership with someone and you're believing that God can do something with this, and the other person is going, Maybe he'll do something when you get up and do. How can you make a partnership out of right and wrong? That's not partnership, that's war. Is light best friends with dark? Does Christ go strolling with the devil? Do trust and mistrust hold hands? I see it all the time in marriages. But here's where we get tripped up. We get tripped up because we think that we've got to be the ones to develop this yoke. And I'm telling you to choose your yoke, and you're going, okay, I'm going to choose my yoke. What does that mean? Yoke? Like egg yolk? It's spelled differently, guys. But Jesus makes it very simple for all of us. He doesn't actually make the choice hard. He says this in Matthew 11:29. He says, hey, take my yoke. So when I say choose your yoke, what I'm saying is you either choose your own yoke or you get to take his yoke. He says, take my yoke upon. He says, let me teach you because I'm humble and gentle at heart, and you'll find rest for your souls. How many of you need rest for your souls? How many of you are spinning your wheels? Your marriage is just going through motions, and it just feels like it's a routine. Or you're just living your single life, and you just feel like you're exhausted all the time, and you have no peace. And you think that vacation, we outside is going to fix it. But if you don't have rest in your soul, you'll be exhausted on the vacation. You'll be exhausted when you get home because there's no peace on the inside. And his yoke is the only way that you'll experience his peace. It's when you take on his yoke. He says, for my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. Let me ask you something. Does your marriage feel like a burden? Does your relationship feel like a burden? Does your life feel like a burden right now? Maybe you got the wrong yoke. Maybe it's all on you to figure it out. Maybe it's all on you to fix it. Maybe it's all on you to repair it. Maybe you're the center of your reality and your world, and God is going, do you want to get well? Take my yoke. My yoke is easy. My burden is light. You're trying to do it on your own, but there's a better way, because the way that we keep our covenant promise to God is by allowing God to make true his promises to us. You can choose your yes, you can choose your yoke. Here's the last thing we get to choose. You can choose your Adam. You can choose your Adam. Choose your Adam? What are you talking about? Yeah, I'm talking about in the Bible. The Bible, the whole story of the Bible is about these two Adams. Can I tell you the story? In Genesis, the first Adam, he disobeys God. And out of that disobedience, he introduces something called sin into the world. And that sin introduces death and brokenness and famine and wars and chaos and disease and calamity. And nations are being destroyed. And people are rejecting God. And people are killing one another. And there's so much devastation that's happening as a result of this brokenness that was introduced into the world. And we were all born into it. And it may be tempting to think that we're not a part of it because our sin doesn't look like their sin. But all of us have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And we all are guilty in some way, in some form, of disobeying him at some point, even if it doesn't look like how somebody else's sin looks. And that's the first Adam. But then there's the last Adam. And the last Adam, his name is, everyone say Jesus. He comes onto the scene and he looks at the brokenness and he goes, I see that, but I've got a better way. I've got a better plan. I'm going to come and I'm going to give the gift of life. And if you follow my path, I promise you, you can escape the brokenness. You can escape the hurt. You can undo the things that have been done to you. And the things that you think are unredeemable, that you want to discard, that you want to get rid of, I can make it a part of your story. I can make it a part of the redemption narrative. I can restore what was broken. I can heal what's hurting. I can fix what's wrong. And I can take what the enemy meant for evil and I can turn it around and I can make it good. It may not start good, but it'll be good if you put it in my hands. You have a choice between which Adam you want to follow. The path of brokenness or the path of peace. Romans 5 goes on in chapter 5, verse 18. It says, yes, Adam's one sin, that first Adam brings condemnation for everyone. But that second Adam, that last Adam, Christ, one act of righteousness brings a right relationship with God and a new life for everyone. Because one person disobeyed God, many became sinners. But because one other person obeyed God, many will be made righteous. Whose hands will you put your marriage into? The first Adam or the last Adam? If you're single in the room, who will you trust your life to? Will you just give up in the brokenness of the first Adam? Or will you wait on the Lord and trust the last Adam to redeem what you want to discard? I think marriages struggle to be healed sometimes because we simply don't have the patience to wait on God. I think people who are even not married and you've been hurt in some way, I think we struggle to be healed because we don't have the patience to wait on God. I think we assume that the healing should take the same amount of time as the hurt took. Somebody did something, an offense happened, trauma happened, boom, instantly you were hurt. And I think that we want that healing to take the same amount of time. So boom, I was hurt, pain. And I'm looking for God to go, boom, I'm healed. Let's get it going. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. and the endurance that we're building in that time, the discipline that it takes, the patience that it requires, all of those things that we don't like, that we don't want, it's actually making you have a better attitude. It's changing you from the inside out. Are you trusting in the process? Are you trusting in the first Adam, or are you trusting in the last Adam?